Welcome in. It's conference championship week. It's going on once again without the Chicago Bears. I'm Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune. That's Marc Silverman of ESPN 1000. Sylvie, how you doing?
I'm great. Yeah. It's one day, Dan. You'll be getting ready for an NFC championship game. We'll be giving away tickets again to the NFC championship game. But until then, we're stuck here.
It's been a decade since the Bears last played in one. It's been even longer since they actually won one. Stuck seems to be the operative word here, Sylvie. We're a week removed now from that end of season state of the franchise address that the Bears gave last week with George McCaskey, Ted Phillips, Ryan Pace, and Matt Nagy, all still in their current roles. There's a couple paths I want to go down with you. And I guess starting out, I'm curious, as you were listening to that in live action, what thoughts were pumping through your brain in terms of where this organization is at and how they have a vision to get out of where they're at?
My first thought was I was sitting in this seat at this computer, and when I heard Ted was going to be a part of it, it gave me some hope that, hey, the reason he's there is to say, hey, I am moving off to the side. We are going to be in search of a different president or somebody, a football guy. Doesn't even have to be a football guy. Like, I don't want to get bogged down in the whole, well, we need a football guy. Then George says, well, our top football guy is Ryan Pace. It's what you tweeted out the other day, Dan, about 22 years and the seven winning seasons, right, and the 3 playoff wins. It's anyone who's overseen a run like that doesn't usually get 22 years. 21 years, whatever it's been.
And 22 seasons now, yeah.
Yeah. So my first gut reaction was, oh my gosh, they're staying the same. And not only are they all staying the same, they're bringing out Ted to flaunt this.
Yeah.
To say, like, there was no reason for him to be there if it was status quo. But it was almost like, we've heard you, Bears fans. We've heard that you don't like our results. We heard that you want to start at the top. And by the way, we're not starting at the top. Here is our top. He's here. He's going to speak too. And he's going to say some of the weirdest things that anyone said since Mark Trestman said we're going to be a team of being selfish and undisciplined. Like, his quote will live in Bears infamy about, have we gotten the quarterback completely right? No. Have we won as many games as we'd like? No. But we got everything else. Like, mind-blowing.
So, let's start there, because obviously that's the money quote from the entire proceeding. And what I wrote for ChicagoTribune.com this week, a week later, after sifting through it last week, is that not only did Ted so cavalierly discard the idea of, well, we don't have the quarterback completely right, and we don't have enough wins, but he also told a white lie in saying that everything else is there. And I know you had Louis Riddick on your show, and from people I talked to around the league as well, the outside reaction to that is, what exactly do you have there? I'm going to go down a list here of things that are not there. A top 10 pick for April's draft, not there. Salary cap space to attack free agency, not there. A defensive coordinator, not there. An elite defense, no longer there. A terrific offensive line, not there. A fully fortified wide receiving core, not there, particularly if Allen Robinson walks away in 8 weeks in free agency and decides the grass is greener somewhere else. A game-breaking star, well, we thought Khalil Mack was that guy. Last 2 seasons, he hasn't reached double digits in sacks, and Ryan Pace tells us last week that he's been dealing with a significant shoulder injury throughout all this. Favorable schedule for next year? Nope. 6 of the 8 opponents they play on the road next year were in the playoffs this year. Off-season program to groom a new quarterback? Probably not going to happen. The NFL is saying that, listen, you may have to go through virtual OTAs and minicamp again. So not only is everything else not there, there's very little that is actually there. And I see it covering your face. It's just a detachment from reality that I think is the most sort of sobering and to be honest, astounding to someone like me who's around it all the time, that thought that this leadership, while it has its flaws, at least had a grip on reality.
Absolutely. And it's not about being a hater, and it's not about wanting to stir it up. It's just wanting a team to win. As a Bears fan, that's where I come from. And when you list that list over things that you don't have, and you know what? If you had that entire list minus one, we can make a point, and that is the quarterback. And it's the thing that's eluded this team forever. If you don't have the quarterback, what do you really have? Now you don't have the quarterback, you don't have the assets, you don't have the draft capital, and you don't have a lot of the other stuff. So again, like, if you're always starting with the season with Russell Wilson, if you're always starting the season with Aaron Rodgers, if you're starting the season for years and years before this year when Drew Brees was healthy with Drew Brees, you could be a flawed team and figure out ways to win. But when you're starting at the point that we don't know where our quarterback's going to come from, and we don't have this whole list, and then you're stuck in the middle, that's the worst place to be. So it's mind-boggling.
They framed things last week as if they were 2/3 of the way up the mountain and that they just needed to stick with it and they were going to get up that last 1/3 of the mountain. The reality is they're closer to the base than they are to the top of that mountain. And I think they need to come to grips with that quick, fast, in a hurry. And it's going to have to dictate some of the moves they make this offseason to realize this is not a one-year fix. It's not. And no one in the NFL believes it to be, except conceivably Ted and George and Ryan, probably in an effort to keep his job, right? In selling that to them. And that brings me to the point that you tried to press George on. You had the privilege and the luxury of talking to George the day after that press conference to press him on some of these things, to have numerous follow-up questions. I'm wondering what your takeaway was in terms of their ability to understand their situation through a sophisticated football lens, because we talk about a football guy, a football person, a football this, a football czar, a football president. They are openly acknowledging that neither Ted nor George has that sort of football sophistication and acumen. So how do you go about evaluating and assessing the people in the key roles of football if you don't have that knowledge? I'm curious if you were satisfied or dissatisfied with the answers that George gave you.
I'm dissatisfied, and I thought George was different. I thought George was going to be different than Michael. And Michael and I covered a lot of those teams where they were dysfunctional. I was at the Dave McGinnis press conference, and I've always cited that I think George wants to win. He just doesn't know how, but maybe he's just stubborn in wanting to do it his way now, and it's not just about not knowing how. And it reminds me a lot of the Blackhawks. It reminds me of George playing the role of Bill Wirtz and having his Bob Pulford sitting next to him. Now, Bob Pulford was a Hall of Fame player and coach who was a hockey guy forever, but they were stubborn and set in their ways.
Right.
Here you have Ted, who's not a Hall of Fame anything. And he is, for some reason, I don't know what the deal was, whether it's just, hey, you have a deal for life because you built us a stadium and you were able to get done what we never thought we'd be able to get done, building us a new stadium inside Chicago city limits with Mayor Daley. But now he's relying on this president, and he doesn't like calling it a football president. He's still the president of the organization. And it's these two guys walking in lockstep. And it's like, there's stuff that's so obvious, not quite to the point where Bill Wirtz won't air home games, but like a lot of stuff that's really obvious that they don't understand.
Right.
That we're like, why don't you get this? Why can't you see this? Why is it? Why are you trusting a guy who's brought in 8 different quarterbacks, none of them a solution? Why are you relying on this guy who could have 1 year left in his football GM life to draft a quarterback when he's only drafted one in his 6 years after he promised to draft one every year? You know, I don't know what it is now, Dan. I don't know if it's stubbornness, stupidness, cheapness. I don't know what the ness is.
Right.
But there's definitely a ness and multiple nesses, and I don't know what it is.
I think you did a nice job of pressing, George, and I was hoping that we would come away with a greater illumination of what the resistance was to just trying something new, right? You've been stuck forever. And to your point, it's been 22 seasons with Ted in his current role. You've had as many losing seasons, 8, as playoff games, 8, right? And you've only won 3 of those playoff games. And so when you see the results and you say, okay, so what is it that gives you belief? And when George comes out in his opening statement last week and basically tells you that Ted's steady hand is something the family believes in because he's able to communicate with employees, it's tone deaf to a fan base that says, I want to be a part of championship weekend, right? Conference championship weekend, Super Bowl weekend. At some point in my fandom, I want to be a part of that. And you're telling them, well, calmed the fears of employees who thought they were going to be furloughed during the pandemic. It's another instance to me where their messaging is so incredibly off at a state where it has to be at its strongest, right? To win back a fan base that has obviously been jolted this season. I'm going to throw this at you because the last time you were on here, the Bears were in the middle of their 5-1 start. And at that point, you were comparing them to a girlfriend that you were having an okay time with, but you knew wasn't marriage material. I'm wondering if you have an update to that analogy with where we're at right now.
I think it's sort of like the girlfriend who every now and then now doesn't come home for you at night, and you know something's going on, but you continue to be a couple. I mean, this is the danger too, Dan, of being in the middle without all that stuff that you mentioned, especially with the quarterback. And why I had a problem with what Pro Football Focus wrote, like that people are being too tough on the Bears, that there's a way lower ground floor. And we know we're pretty certain they're going to probably reach that before it gets better. And like, now's your chance to fix that, to make sure that this is the basement and to go up. But there's no basis for believing that they are going to go up. This is what I'm going to bring up on my show, and I wanted to offer this to you. This is what scares me the most about the quarterback position. If you look, besides the great teams in the league, who are the smartest people in football, who would you list off other than 4 teams? Who are the people, coaches, front office people that you consider the smartest people in football?
Of the teams remaining?
No, besides the team. So of the other 28 teams, 27 excluding the Bears.
So who you're talking about, coaches, general managers?
Anybody. When I say Dan Wiederer, who are the smartest people in football, coach, GM, whatever, when I say to you?
How many do I need to give you?
Just give me a few here.
Players are allowed as well?
No, coaches, front office, guys who run their teams.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you're starting with the Steelers and Colbert. I think you're looking at Bill Belichick in New England.
Okay, so wait, so Steelers and Colbert, right? And do they need a quarterback?
Potentially, I don't know. They're eventually going to need one. Yeah.
Right. Okay, go ahead. Give me another one.
Belichick.
Do they need a quarterback?
100%.
Okay, give me another one.
I mean, I'd say Sean Payton's on that list just off the top of my head, just because they have been in the playoffs more often than they're not.
They need a quarterback. So here's my point, dude, that the Bears have not gotten the quarterback right. Correct. When they haven't fought with the smartest minds in football when they've needed a quarterback. Now you're competing with Belichick. You're competing with Sean Payton. You're competing with the Steelers, who always find one. You're competing with Shanahan in San Francisco. They'll probably need a quarterback. He's one of the smartest offensive minds in football. So why do I believe that Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, who hasn't been able to build an offense, Ryan Pace, who hasn't gotten the quarterback position right to compete with the heaviest hitters in football, why are they going to get the quarterback?
I'm going to give you one word on why they believe so at Hallis Hall. You know the word. It's the buzzword of
the
collaboration. I will say this on the quarterback topic. Matt at least was part of a process 4 years ago, the same process that Ryan was a part of here in Chicago, where the Chiefs actually hit the grand slam. And so he needs to pull his binders out from the 2017 winter and spring and say, Ryan, these are all the things we did with every quarterback in the class to vet them, to check off the boxes, to ultimately circle our sheet and put it in highlighter and red ink and say, Patrick Mahomes, this is the guy we want. And he has to share that information openly with Ryan Pace. Remember, John DeFilippo was also part of a similar process with the Eagles when they drafted Carson Wentz and in the Wentz golf draft. So these guys have had experience going through these processes. Now, I will flip this back in saying that 4 years ago, the Bears were not set up to succeed in the mission that they had. They had a top 3 pick and the chance to pick from the buffet of a quarterback class that we now know was historically good. Right. They put the wrong guy off the thing, in big part because there was a major disconnect within the organization where there wasn't the collaboration that the Bears are talking about now. This time around, they're going to try to pick a quarterback during a pre-draft process where you're not going to get the combine. You're not going to be able to meet with guys in your facility. You're going to be limited in how much you're able to go to their campus and spend time with them. You're going to be limited, as we talked about earlier, in having actual off-season on-field work to bring a quarterback along. I mean, if you bring a rookie quarterback into that environment, it's like the lockout year all over again, right? You have to reset your timeline to say, this guy's not going to be ready in September. He's probably not going to be ready in October. And now all of a sudden, if you're in a win or else year, what are we doing, right? And so once again, the timing doesn't match up with the need, and they're in trouble.
Well, and then what you went back to about Matt Nagy being a part of the process, can he bring Brett Veach with him, who runs Kansas City? Can he bring John Dorsey with him, who was the general manager at that time? And we've seen some of the talent that John Dorsey acquired before he left Cleveland. That Cleveland team that won, 11 games, counting a playoff win, or whatever it was, 11 or 12. So, like, who's going to be Brett Veach? Who's going to be John Dorsey? Who's going to be the guy who's going to say, this is the one, this is the right way to go with all that competition? And I just don't have much faith that I hope they get it right.
Right.
But how can I rely on them?
That's what it is. It's hope. It's hope. The last thing before I let you go, they brought up this other word, culture, right? And I know you pressed George on saying, listen, you guys talk about a great culture. There are things that proved to be flawed in your culture. And one of those things was having two receivers punch the same defensive back from the New Orleans Saints in separate games, get ejected from the game. And George gave you an answer about both Javon Wims and Anthony Miller that was interesting to me, because he sort of let Javon Wims off the hook and was much harder on Anthony Miller, because Anthony Miller had been warned, don't do this. Also, we need you in this game. Darnell Mooney's hurt. And George seemed upset at Anthony Miller, but he kind of gave Javon Wims a free pass and said Javon was immediately remorseful. Javon worked his butt off. Javon tried his best to get back and help the team. And you know what else Javon did? He dropped a touchdown pass in a playoff game. And so it's this once again, it's this rewarding of hard work and upbeat attitude and trying to do the right thing when the moment comes for you and you fail in it. He said similar things about Mitch Trubisky and what a great representative of the Chicago Bears he was. And we've talked about that for years. Great dude. Very good representative for the franchise. Wasn't good enough at the most important position on the roster, and now you're restarting again. So you have to stop putting these premium values on guys who do all the right things when the results they get on the field don't get you anywhere.
This is what I want. This is what I suggested the Bears do. I want George McCaskey to fly down to one of the coasts of Florida. Whether you want to go on the West Coast and you want to go in the Naples area, or whether you want to go to Jupiter, Florida, on the other side, West Palm. And I want him to find lots of land, and I want him to buy the land. And then he can build a house for him. He could build a house for Matt. He could build a house for Ryan. He could build a house for Mitch. And now he can build a house for Javon. Because they're all good guys and they're all good enough to be neighbors and friendly enough to be neighbors. But I don't want them to run my football team. And that's the problem. They're all guys who I would love to be neighbors with, all really cool neighborhood. They could all have vacation homes together. They could all enjoy each other, and they could sit out and build bonfires at night, and they could share their time together. But when it comes time to win a football game, when it comes time to win a division, when it comes time to finding a quarterback, keep them in Florida, because I need other people to build my real culture for a football team.
Well, get ready to put on the shoulder harness, the lap bar, buckle into this roller coaster. It's going around again. And you know what I've told you about a roller coaster? It always winds up where it started. That is the definition of the Chicago Bears.
And you're giving roller coaster, you and Waddle give roller coasters bad names, because I'm a roller coaster geek. I love roller coasters, but this Bears roller coaster ride is a bad roller coaster ride.
Late 90s Great America, favorite roller coaster?
I still am an Eagle guy. No hands on the Eagle. When they built Shockwave, even though it concussed you every time you were on it, and Batman still even like, and it's why we're season pass holders again for Great America, and COVID ruined it for us. So I can't wait to get back and start riding them with my kids. We're going to go to Cedar Point at one time, but I could talk. We could do a separate podcast on Great America roller coasters. Raging Bull is still, I mean, no hands on Raging Bull in the first drop. How great is that?
Iron Wolf, middle school, early high school, man. Iron Wolf, loved it.
It always messed me up. That's the stand-up roller coaster, right?
Yeah. You had to make sure that you gave yourself a little room down below, because that seat was adjustable, right? And if you got yourself in a precarious position, it wasn't good.
Tricks of the trade.
Anyway, the Bears are going to be back on this roller coaster. I have a feeling we're going to be getting months and months out of those 87 minutes of interviews that we did last week. It doesn't seem like there's any end in sight to digging through the words that they gave us, and they seem stuck.
Yeah. Good luck.
Thanks as always for joining me. Remember to subscribe. I don't know where the button is. It's over here.
Yeah.
It's over there. Subscribe. Join us. Sylvie will be back again sometime soon. Thanks for joining us, Marc.
You got it. Keep up the great work.